Chess South Africa has been all over the media in the recent times, and most specifically the suspension of the current Chess South African board. As with everything, it is important that we have all sides of the story with regards to transgressions that takes place in sport in South Africa. We've seen that the media has pushed a certain narrative at this stage, and today we are here to get the other side of the story. We have the current president, Hendrik de Tooy, and the vice president, Judy Marie Steenkamp, with us today to give us a wider perspective of what's truly going on in chess in South Africa. Hendrik and Judy, welcome. Can we maybe start off by you telling us how you got involved in Chess South Africa?
Well, yeah, it's a long story that started, I think, around about in 2006 when my eldest son started playing. And he was pretty good at it quite quickly. And one would sit around outside. We always call it the camping parents, because, like, for instance, the other sports, it's 45 minutes and it's done. Chess is a whole day, it's 2 days. So you take your camping chair, you go and sit outside, and I've always been, I don't have OCD, I have CDO, because OCD is not alphabetical, so it's CDO for me. And I can't sit around and just do nothing. So I was sitting outside, and chess is a voluntary business or a voluntary sport. And sitting outside looking at, and it was evident that there's always some hands needed inside or with organizing the tournament. And one just offered help. And from coming a little bit from carrying tables and chairs, and then learn to how to pack the boards, one came into being an administrator, and then later on an arbiter, which I am today purely or mainly. Yes, I'm an administrator, but the arbiter side, in other words, in what for the audience out there, an arbiter in chess is like a referee that you would get in any other sport. So I've qualified myself up to an international arbiter, and that's what I really enjoy. So that's how I got involved. It's because of my kids.
Judy?
Yeah, I'm more or less the same. My son started to play in grade 1 in 2005, and the teacher retired that organized the chess, and I then said, well, I'll make sure the team goes to Cape Town at that stage. And then after that, sitting at tournaments, and it starts with moving a table. And at the end, if you start moving a table or helping, a little bit later in Chess South Africa, just how it goes. I'm an international organizer. It's an international qualification to organize tournaments, which is my passion.
Okay, so it's quite evident that both of your children got you into this. So I think there's a few nights that you probably lie and not too happy that they did that. Let's speak about the current affairs of Chess South Africa and the current state of Chess South Africa at the moment, Hendrik. We've seen a lot of narratives in the media about what's going on, and there's a lot of opinions with regards to the suspension of the Chess South African board. Can you maybe provide us with a wide perspective of what's truly going on in chess in South Africa at this stage?
To a certain extent, the situation is quite complicated, but also maybe more simple than one would think. The simple situation in all of this is that there's a group of people, it's a syndicate, that has been established to a certain extent, or with the help of SASCOC, that is trying to oust whoever the executive board is, with the single objective of taking over chess and for their own purposes. And they believe that the belief is that there's a lot of money in chess, and it's just simply not true. But then again, what is a lot of money for one person is not necessarily a lot of money for somebody else. From a personal point of view, is that there's not a lot of money in chess. But unfortunately, there are a group that believe there is, and they want to take over chess for their own purposes. And I can give a lot of examples of that. But in a nutshell, this is, and it comes under the narratives of trying to under democracy, which is actually quite ironical, because what they are doing and how it's currently happening is so far removed from democracy that it's a joke.
Yeah, Hendrik, that's quite a strong statement that you've made with regards to that there is a syndicate in chess in South Africa that's trying to take over the sport. Why would they do this? You've mentioned that there's maybe a thought that there's a lot of money in chess South Africa, but surely they would have seen by now, it's a long process from where this has started, that that's not the case. So just for our audience that might view this as a very strong statement that in their view possibly can't be backed, why would you say that these individuals would try to hijack chess South Africa, if we can put it in ransom terms?
Well, it depends on how you look at when you say that there's not a lot of money. There is a lot of money in chess, but previously it came from government. It comes from various sources, but that money is and will never be for the administrators, because it's a voluntary job or a voluntary position. But being it that there's a lot of money that just flows through the sport, there's a lot of opportunity for corruption. To give you an example, in the last government grant that was, a grant that was given to Chess South Africa was in 2017. And from that, and that was 1.7 million rand. From that 1.7 million rand, 1.4 million rand was spent on air tickets. Now, was spent on air tickets, accommodation, car rental, and all sorts of other items that's got nothing to do with the development of sport. So, and again, just to reiterate where from my previous statement is, myself personal, it can never be profitable for me within chess, simply because, if I may say so, I'm a highly qualified IT specialist. So the money that comes in from chess, all the time that I, for instance, myself spend on chess, I'm actually losing money. So for me to fly around the country living off those grants doesn't make sense. It actually costs me money. However, for somebody else, and specifically the syndicates, now take into account that the leader of the syndicate, he used to be the leader, he's now been replaced. But the leader of the syndicate, Mr. Joe Mahomoli, was the vice president of the previous executive and also of the interim executive board. And under their leadership, they've wasted 1.4 million rand on air tickets, accommodation, car rental. I was actually shocked when I saw this, because we redid all the books in the beginning of this year, because they'd never completed their own set of books. And when we took that over, it was just in such a state that you couldn't do anything with it. So we had to redo it, and I did that myself. And as I say, it's at least 1.4 million rand that was there was nothing that went back into the sports. It's meetings after meeting, after travel, with no outcomes. Absolutely no outcomes. So when these syndicates see this flying around the country, traveling, all sorts of, it's lucrative for them. For us, it's just not lucrative. Something like that cost me money, but for them, it's a very nice lifestyle. And then also, we try to bring a more business perspective to chess in South Africa, to drive it and to organize it as a business. But when you drive it as a business, there are certain rules, policies, etc., that comes into place. Now, for instance, if you take the 2017 SA Open that was held in KZN, although SA Open is a South African Open, it's a flagship tournament with a couple of million turnover every year. None of that money in 2017 went through either, although the tournament was on the auspices of KZN Chess, none of that money went through the KZN Chess bank account. It went through a private bank account of an academy. And we say, but hold on, what happened to the money? What happened to, there must be some profit. What happened to it? If the tournament was, so, and we put a stop to that. Tournaments for specific entities, like regional tournaments, provincial tournaments, are run from the boot of a car, where literally players come and they pay, the money is put in the boot of the car. Then when the treasurer comes and says, can we please go and bank the money? They say no. And the money just disappears. So the important thing for us is we do not want to stop the entrepreneurship within chess. In fact, it's something that we would like to flourish. However, it must be controlled, it must be accountable, and the community, because it is a community sport, Chess South Africa belongs to the community, so the whole community must benefit. And these are, so we are, and these are just one or two examples. I can give you quite a number of more examples. So for us, it's about stopping that, putting in order, and actually just legitimizing and under good controls, policies, and procedures run chess. And so that entrepreneurs, officials, administrators can actually make a living out of from chess, because we believe that it is possible, and that can only be good for the sport. If you look at all the professional sports, rugby, cricket, hockey to a certain extent, which is a professional sport and is being run as a business, where you have got entrepreneurs all over the country making money, or making a living, not just making money, but making a living. A coach, we have got several professional coaches, not several, actually hundreds of professional chess coaches in South Africa. But they're scraping by, and we believe that if we formalize it, put proper systems in place, proper procedures, they can actually make quite a good living from it.
So Hendrik, if I understand you correctly, there shouldn't be a lot of money available for top management of Chess South Africa, but there should be a lot of money, if it's managed properly, to go into the grassroots levels of the sport, to go to the people that should actually uplift the sport, like the coaches, like the management on provincial level, who should actually enhance the sport. And a lot of money should actually go back to the development of the sport at grassroots level, but that's not happening at the moment. So we'll get more into that just now. Judy, if we can maybe just, Hendrik mentioned a few stuff about at administrative level. Just give us a broad perspective of what the South African Chess Board is responsible for at an administrative level to ensure that the body is governed in a proper manner.
Well, mainly putting policies and procedures together to make sure that, that it's followed, and to make sure that all the provinces and all the various bodies follow, their constitutions, because everything is governed by the constitution, and which is actually I think the backbone of any organization, because it puts down the rules and regulations. And if you don't have rules and regulations, then you have chaos. And that is actually why you have administrators, to make sure that this is implemented on all levels and make sure that everybody adheres to that.
Let's stand still on that for a moment. With regards to the Constitution and the policies in Chess South Africa, is there a culture of adherence to that policies and the Constitution of Chess South Africa at the moment? Or what is the state with regards to these administrative issues?
No, unfortunately not. That is the reason we went to court in the first place in 2018, was that the previous executive board organized a meeting that was not in line with the Chess South Africa Constitution. And we tried to force them to ensure that they adhere to the Constitution. They then organized an election and again, didn't follow procedure. At the moment, I don't think there is currently one province that's actually constituted correctly at the moment, because they just ignore it and think it's a guideline and we don't need it. And that is our main problem in Chess South Africa. And I think that's the main thing that we wanted to do in Chess South Africa, and make sure that everybody follows the Constitution and adhere to the Constitution. There are some things in the Constitution that needs to change, that makes it difficult for provinces to be in line with the Constitution. But unfortunately, we are in a position where you need to have an AGM where you can change the Constitution, but you need everybody to be in line with the Constitution in order to have a vote. And and this is now exactly where we are, is that due to the provinces not adhering to their own constitutions and those of the one of Chess South Africa, we have this chaos.
Hendrik, Judy has quickly touched on the court cases subject. So in the media, it might look like this is a new thing. And from what I understand, this has come quite a while now. It's come a few years. Can you maybe shortly provide us some background with regards to the court cases that has taken place, what the reason for those court cases was, and what the outcome was of those court cases?
Sure. Okay. Right. I can do that, but if I may, just start a little bit before the court case, and it's actually the origin of it all. And looking back today, with it's actually shocking where it started and how it started, and at the time that we didn't see what was happening, simply because we believe in the good of all people and you believe in just simple mistakes, etc. But then when you start looking and these mistakes happen all the time, you realize, hang on, those were not mistakes, those were orchestrated. So let me start at the beginning. Chess South Africa was supposed to have an elective AGM on the 11th of January 2018. SASCOC at that time was appointed as the elections officer. And within the Constitution of Chess South Africa, the elections officer has actually got quite a task, making sure that whoever is at the whoever's at the meeting is in good standing, making sure that the nominations are in by time, making sure that all the timelines are followed, etc. Cut a long story short, when we arrived at the meeting of the 11th of January in 2018, SASCOC has done none of those. So we arrived at an AGM where we couldn't have an election because SASCOC failed their duty. At the time, and the question still today is, was this just of pure incompetence, or was it deliberate? And going forward, I think the viewers can make that judgment for themselves. So what then happened after that? So the election of the 18th of January, or the 18th of January 2018, never took place. Subsequently to that, Chess South Africa, under the leadership of the interim president, who was Mr. Winston Dolpat, then decided to start taking action. And Mr. Dolpat actually started realizing the importance of compliance to the Constitution. They asked all the provinces to be compliant. So this is now actually 2 executive boards back. They decided. Then these, and there's no other word to call them, but they are hijackers, or hijackers which are part of the syndicate, then realized, but hold on, now we're caught out, because they've slowly through time infiltrated the system plain through the previous boards not checking on compliance. The last compliance that was checked was in 2012, just to give you an idea. We're now 2017. And so they infiltrated, they realized, hold on, if there's compliance, we will not be able to, we would not be able to have a vote at the next election. What we didn't know is that SASCOC were actually, or all indicates to, that SASCOC actually had a hand in propping up the syndicate. Because the next thing that happens is SASCOC, so then Chess South Africa, after the election, suspended 5 members who were not in good standing. SASCOC then, out of the blue, forces Chess South Africa to reinstate, against the Constitution of Chess South Africa, forces Chess South Africa, the executive board, to reinstate those provinces that was not in good standing and not compliant. They organize a meeting on the 1st of July 2018, which was supposed to be, it's an SGM, a special general meeting, where this was supposed to be this discussion on how Chess South Africa is going to move forward. The next thing, at this meeting that's arranged by SASCOC, there's an impromptu election. They kick out the current, the interim president at that, or it wasn't the interim president, he was the acting president. Unfortunately, the president at that time passed away. So the vice president, who was Mr. Winston Dolpat, took over and he became the acting president. At an impromptu election, they kick him out, they kick out the board, they elect a new board, and that's just it. Gauteng Chess, at that time, I was the president of Gauteng Chess, and also the Players Commission protested profusely against this procedure, because a couple of days before we realized what's happening, or we got sniff of what's happening. But long and the short is, at this meeting, the board gets kicked out, a new board gets voted in, and the syndicate now all of a sudden is in charge of Chess South Africa. And that was in a nutshell, that was the origin of the problems of Chess South Africa. We then, Gauteng Chess at that time said, this can't be, we have to follow the Constitution, the meeting was unconstitutional, etc. We went to court and we actually won. The court set aside that particular meeting and ordered, the court then implemented an interim executive board and ordered a new election. So that's, in your question, to answer a short question, that is where it started, and that's how it started. And if one look again, and I'm sure that through the rest of the interview, one will point to more of these interventions of where SASCOC at particular points got involved in this whole process, one cannot other but start wondering is, where I asked the question in the beginning, is this just sheer incompetence, or is this actually an orchestration of getting to a certain point where SASCOC wanted to get where we are today.
Was that action of SASCOC, according to the Constitution of Chess South Africa, to order that SGM and to get a vote on a new board?
No, it's completely unconstitutional. And what is worrisome is that SASCOC, who is the governing body of chess, of sport in South Africa, either did not understand how a constitution works and what is legal and what's not legal, or alternatively, just completely ignored it and did it in any case. And pick any one of the two that you want, but it's quite alarming.
Yeah. Judy, Hendrik quickly touched on the reason for the first court case. How many court cases has there been since then, up until now?
Well, there's actually, we started with one in December 2018, when we applied the court to allow the election to go forward, and then we brought the IEB, or the executive board, that was the interim board. They just went on as if they were the committee. So we then brought the interdict against them. And they, in the same court case, they brought a counter application. And this is this counter application that actually took so long. So we were in court for 3 years. And we had a judgment where the judge messed up, actually. She actually used things that we did and said the other board did it. So she got a bit confused between the two bodies, and we had to appeal the court case. And the appeal, we appealed it, and we got a result February last year, where we had a full bench of judges that ruled in favour of Chess South Africa, the current executive board.
So, out of all of the court cases that has been dealt with, not one was ordered against you, except for the one that you took on appeal and won then at the end. Where was SASCOC in this process with regards to all of these court cases?
SASCOC tried to intervene on numerous occasions, where they tried to set up a meeting with the executive board, as well as the interim executive board, the so-called, what's the word, or the interim board. And they tried to mediate between the two, which we on the occasions told them that we have a court case ongoing, and we can't now, have a mediation and have a different outcome. We are in court, and we need to wait until we get the ruling from court.
Hendrik, you've mentioned at the start that getting involved at an administrative level in Chess South Africa is a voluntary decision that you make. Why? Why would you keep on fighting this fight if it is something that you need to do in your personal time? And what I'm accepting is that you had to pay for these court cases as well. And in payment, I mean that you had to spend a lot of time out of your normal daily job. Why?
Well, just to, on that is, first of all, we did spend a lot of our own personal and private time, but we also spend a lot of our personal and private funds on this, between myself and Judy. Excuse me. The question to why actually comes down to, it started off with something where we said we want to get involved while our children is playing. It helps us. If we get involved, we make it better for them. We make it better for the other children. But then in the end, where we are now, it is just a matter of right and wrong. What's right and what's wrong. What's currently happening is wrong. It should not be happening. We are a democracy in South Africa, and democracy does not mean, and unfortunately this is where the rest of where the syndicate is, their view of democracy is bring a few chommies, we vote, and then we have a board. And that is not democracy. Democracy goes down to the individual level at the ground. And maybe bar 2 of the provinces, at least 7 of them has not been voted in by the players from the ground up. They have installed themselves in some or other way to get to that position. But in the end, I think the old, or there's a meme that going around that says, for evil to succeed, good men only has to do nothing. And I think that just sums it up for me is, I cannot just sit back and look at this and say, you know, if I can switch to Afrikaans quickly, it says God's water oor God's akker. In other words, it's just what must happen now must just happen. I've just never been that person. If I see something is broken, I try to fix it. And that's where we are, is we cannot just sit back, do nothing, because the sport will be decimated. It will be completely it will just be decimated.
Hendrik, in the media, one of the major speaking points has been the 4 Knights Agreement. And many people are arguing that that agreement is for your personal gain. And for both of you sitting here today, can we maybe get some perspective with regards to where the 4 Knights Agreement came from and what it entails and what the process has been from then up until now?
It's got quite a history, obviously, to it. In 2014, Chess South Africa was awarded the World Youth Chess Championships. When this tournament was awarded to Chess South Africa, myself and Judy, who's, I think we can say that we are esteemed tournament organizers, we looked at that, we said, now remember at that point in time, we were not in the structures of Chess South Africa. We were at regional level, but not a provincial, not on a national level. So we were basically running Gauteng Chess, Gauteng North Chess at that time. And the 2 of us, well, actually not the 2 of us, the board of Tshwane Chess, and we have a non-profit called Tshwane Chess NPC. Really try to get some funds in to enhance chess. But anyway, so Chess South Africa hosted the World Youth in 2014, and it came out that at the end of this tournament they owed a minimum of 2.1 million rand of debt, which they couldn't pay. They just could not pay it. And the international, the International Chess Federation, and a lot of this money was owed to arbiters, and which we spoke to, the referees that came to the 2014 game. They were arbiters. They could not be paid, so we had a lot of international referees coming to South Africa, and we couldn't pay them, and they were not paid. Also, there was quite a substantial money owed to FIDE, the international body, and FIDE at that time intervened and said, Chess South Africa, either pay your money, pay your dues, or you will be suspended from the world body. Now, being suspended from the world body is an instant kill, because you cannot participate internationally anymore. You're not part of the international federation. So in the non-profit organization, we had some money, that we've accumulated over time and with really hard work and the ingenuity of Judy. So Judy came to me one day and she said, we cannot allow Chess South Africa to be suspended from the international. Let us loan this money to Chess South Africa. Cut a long story short, we went to Chess South Africa. We said, we will get the money for you. There was a number of backwards and forwards, and in the end, Chess South Africa, the board, under the leadership of Mr. Aldo Smart, then signed an agreement with a company called 4 Knights. Now, just to be clear, at that time, I was not part. When the agreement was signed, I was not part of signing the agreement. I was not part of the company. But I was part of raising the money. So we got investors. We got investors say, please, and these were people that love chess, said, please come, invest, let us take this money and pay the dues of Chess South Africa, so at least that and we did that. To be clear, myself or Judy did not invest any money in this company. And the reason for me to make that clear is because people think that I've got a vested, if 4 Knights goes under, then I'm losing a lot of money. I'll only be losing the time that I've invested in it. We've invested no money in it. So there is no vested interest from a monetary point of view for the two of us in 4 Knights. However, we raised the money and the investors made us responsible. They said, you raise the money, we trust you, you make sure that we get our money back. Up to today, we've held 6 of these tournaments. Then there was an agreement was concluded where we had to get the money back, or the money has to be paid back, so that the investors could be paid back. And it was due through a tournament called the Junior National Tournament. Also, part of the agreement is that 4 Knights has to pay a royalty to Chess South Africa. So and it escalates through time. Currently, that royalty is about 370,000 rand. So from this tournament, Chess South Africa actually gets an income of 370,000 rand, and that payment has been paid. Also, or maybe the last thing is that until today, neither Judy nor me has taken any profits from the company. Nothing, 0. We do get a stipend every year to run the tournament, because obviously we give some of our personal time, but that's a fixed stipend where we say that's the amount. It takes about 4 months out of our own time to get this tournament. It's a huge tournament. It's 2,100 players. So we get a stipend to do it, but it's a fixed amount. And that's it. We have not. And the reason why we haven't taken profits, because any profit that we've made, we've put back into assisting players. Every year we support between, we spend about, or we put back about between 350 and 450,000 rand in assisting players with accommodation, waiving their fees. We have every year brought out one of the top 10 grandmasters in the world. We've brought him here to meet the children, so that they have got somebody they can look up to. So the important part is that between myself and Judy, we have not taken 1 cent of profit. So for those that says we're doing it for our own pockets, I wish.
Judy, so why would the media communicate the 4 Knights agreement so strictly and not focus on the failures on administrative level in chess in South Africa at the moment? And we know that the current board is suspended, and that this is all over the media. And the major reason that they're covering the suspension on is that you guys aren't following the constitution and that you don't have any members. And what I've heard now is that it's actually the other way around. So why would the 4 Knights Agreement take all of the light and not the other side of the story, in your opinion?
I think what people tend to forget, when we started with the 4 Knights contract, or the idea was to help Chess South Africa, and Chess South Africa was really in dire straits at the time, and I think it's part of the people, the syndicate, so-called syndicate, that shout so loudly, that they drive this that it's very expensive to participate in the tournament, and that, you know, people can't afford it. Unfortunately, it is expensive to stay in any hotel or any place for a week. When accommodation, food is expensive, and not really. I mean, wherever you stay, you need to pay for that. And unfortunately, because the tournament runs over 9 days, it all adds up. And the drive is mainly that it's a very expensive tournament to play, and that the majority of people can't afford it. Which I can also say from 4 Nights, we've never shown anybody away. Anybody that contacted us and say, look, I can't pay, I desperately want to play, but we just don't have the funds, we've sponsored them. And I think the fact that they, you know, use this as a, what's the word?
A driver in the media.
Yeah, a drive that, you know, it's all about profits, and we wanting to make this profits, and you know, they get the sympathy of people that we are these sharks and we only want to take their money, and you know, they don't see the good. They only see, you know, the tournaments are so expensive, and they can do it cheaper, and they've tried organizing a tournament, and then they realized, but they actually have to pay for the venue. It doesn't come free, and they actually have to pay for the transport, and then they actually have to pay for accommodation, and then they actually have to pay for food. It just doesn't come free, and so we try from our side to keep it as low as possible. We still have a responsibility towards our investors to repay them, and that is our goal at the end, is to repay our investors what we owe them. Of course, we borrowed the money from them, and it needs to go back to them. And at the same time, as Hendrik said, we try to support the players that need our support. We send some players overseas actually to participate and got some training in Europe. We sponsored two players to Europe for 6 weeks. So we try from our side also to do our part of development, and yeah, but I think it's mainly the money thing. According to them, the tournament makes a profit of 13 million. Our turnover isn't even 13 million, so I don't know, you know, where they get the numbers from. But yeah, we try from our side to keep the costs low. But unfortunately, life is expensive these days.
We've drawn quite a good background at the moment, up until now. Hendrik, what is the current state of chess in South Africa, and especially the matter of the South African Chess Board being suspended?
Well, maybe I think the first correction there is the Chess Board is not suspended. Chess in South Africa is suspended. However, and that cottons on to the previous conversation, where SASCOC at this point in time is driving the narrative that the EXBO, Executive Board, has been suspended. It is not within the constitution of SASCOC to be able to suspend the Executive Board. They can only suspend the sport. And that is part of the unconstitutionality that we are currently dealing with is SASCOC has removed or is trying to remove the democratically elected board of a sport, take it out and replace it with another board. That there is nowhere in the Chess South Africa Constitution or in the SASCOC Constitution that allows them to do that. What SASCOC should be doing at this point in time, if it is true what I'm saying, and I'm not saying that it is true, but if they wanted to follow their own constitution, and I mean by the SASCOC Constitution in conjunction with the Chess South Africa Constitution, they should have they can suspend the board, the sport, but there's a specific procedure that you have to follow, and they've followed that procedure sort of to which supports the agenda. And then they have to work with the sport, i.e. the executive board of the sport, to then get the sport in good standing. You cannot, it's not legal for them to just remove the board and replace it with something else. That is like coming to AfriForum and say, well, you know what, we're just going to remove your executive and we're going to put in another executive. It's just not how it works in South Africa. And now you start putting that into the narrative of what's been happening before, and you start realizing that there was a specific plan from day one on where they want to get to. My personal opinion is that, or my opinion is that SASCOC tried to do this through some individuals. They couldn't get it right, and they're now at the point where they say, well, you guys, and I'm talking about the interim executive board that we were fighting for 3 or 4 years in court. Well, you can getting it right, now we will do it. And SASCOC has just taken over everything. Or trying to take over the process of replacing the current board.
Hendrik, you briefly mentioned that SASCOC is supposed to support the sporting code to get its house in order. So in Lantham terms, it means that they should work with the executive board of that sport to get everything in order. Have you, as the executive board, received any assistance from SASCOC in this regard?
The short answer to that is no, we did not get any support. There were many attempts from our side. We contacted SASCOC a number of times, say, please help. It always came back, most of the time we were just ignored. Finally, in September of, I think it's August of September 2022, we insisted, after I've repetitively asked SASCOC in writing, please help us, please help us, please help us. They eventually came back and they, with sort of this half-hearted, okay, right, let's set up a meeting. We did go through the meeting, we did have a meeting, I think it was September 2022, which was quite a strange meeting because it was more an interrogation than how can we help. And there's a fine line between an interrogation and how we can, and it just depends on how you ask the questions. The conclusion of that meeting was, well, I've explained to SASCOC at that time that first of all, we didn't have the audited financial statements for the simple reason that it wasn't done since 2017. And those were the boards that they supported. We could not get the source documents and the information from the interim executive boards which they installed. We could not get that information from them. So for us, to expect us to just have the financial statements ready is just not possible. And what we tried to articulate to them is that they were actually, it was part of what they did is that put us in this situation. So in a nice way, I tried to explain to SASCOC and through other meetings and conversations, guys, the reason why we are in this position is because of your interference, because they never assisted, it was always interference. So this is what we need to do, or this is what we want to do, this is where we get to. And then at the end of the meeting, which was quite strange to us, they said, okay, well then, just send us the following documents. And they went through a list of about 9 documents. And then the meeting was over. The executive board had a meeting after that, where a retrospective meeting, and we looked at that and we said, and my view of that was, we've just explained to SASCOC that that these documents, first of all, some of the documents that were required was procedures or policies and procedures that was implemented in the last 2 years. However, SASCOC has not invited us to any of their meetings since 2018. So we were not privy to that. So they didn't invite us to our meetings. They didn't send us any communication on these. So all of a sudden they are now saying, can I please have these documentation from you tomorrow? And we say, but we didn't even know that these documents existed because you have excluded us completely from communication, from inviting us to the general meetings that was hosted by SASCOC. And now you say, so we started to feel a setup where we explained we were honest in explaining our situation, explaining to SASCOC that they actually had part in this, and let us try and solve this together. Then time went by. We tried to, one of the things that they needed was the annual financial statements, which we immediately then started compiling, despite the fact that we didn't have all the source documents, and it didn't look like SASCOC was going to assist us in any way to get these source documents from the previous executive and the interim executive board, which they assisted to install. But nevertheless, we got in January, we basically did 2017 up to 2020, we redid all the books from bank statements because we don't have any other source documents. And we handed them over to the auditors. And at the time, or still, and 5 years, auditing 5 years is quite, it's a substantial task. At the meeting in February, they insisted again, can we please, they want the documentation. We again then wrote to them and said, we have difficulty with this, please help us. Because we are not getting the source documents from the IEB which they installed. So please come help us to get this documentation. If you just write to them, say, please, we order you to hand over all the source documents, even though up to today there is one bank account that is still in the name of Joe Mahomole or Joe Mahomole and his interim executive board, which is an account that they actually drained, which we can't get access to. We know that there was about 400,000 Rand in the account when they started. I know today that there's, when they left, there were 3,000 Rand left in the account. We don't know what happened to the 400,000 Rand that was in the account. And that is still with, and we cannot get access to that account. So we asked SASCOC, please help us. SASCOC then replied, thank you, we will get back to you. And then the next day they got back to you and say, thank you, you suspended. So in short is no, SASCOC, we never received received any help from SASCOC. The irony of all of this is all that we want, and I am 110% sure, speaking on behalf of the executive board, we want an election according to the SASCOC, a democratic election, according to the South Africa Constitution, as soon as possible. The community needs that. We have done everything that we can to try and do that without any help from SASCOC. Now, SASCOC has suspended us, and they are just doing exactly what we asked them to do, or to assist us with. So the question is, why didn't they assist us earlier? Why did they have to get rid of us, or try to get rid of us, and then now follow this process? And I think the answer is quite clear. There was a meeting on the 19th of May, which was a so-called consultative meeting, where Chess South Africa, or the executive board of Chess South Africa, was not invited to this meeting, which again is unconstitutional. So it's an unlawful meeting. But we insisted. We said, we are coming. We are coming to this meeting. And obviously, because of the legal implications, we brought our long-standing counsel, took counsel with us. And first of all, they ejected him. They refused him to come into the meeting. And then we started questioning. And then what was quite monumental in that meeting is they literally, I think it's the CEO, Lindiwe Simelane, shouted from when Judy Marie insisted or asked if the constitution of Chess South Africa is going to be upheld. She shouted from the top of her lungs, what does the constitution of Chess South Africa has got to do with all of this? Basically saying that the constitution of Chess South Africa means nothing. We are going to follow a process here to install whoever we want to install, and the constitution means nothing. So it remains to be seen, but if this process, which we intend to stop from happening, but if they succeed, I am quite sure that the Constitution and all the democratic values that this great Chess South Africa was founded under will just be null and void.
So we've come to the point that we've dealt with the whole background up until the current suspension of the board. Can we just, in conclusion, quickly touch on the ground level implications of the suspension? Judy, if you can maybe just briefly elaborate, and Hendrik, if you can add something from her then if she's missing something.
The main thing is international participation for the children. We participate in quite a number of international events yearly. The first event for this year is starting on the 5th of June, which is next week. And we had a problem with these children getting their colours to participate. And then we, from a board perspective, we don't know now, with all the invitations now coming in for the rest of the year for our international tournaments, we can't send players, we can't invite them, so nobody knows actually what's going on. As well as we had the SA Open, which usually happens during July. We can't organize the tournament as we don't know what's going on and what's happening. And, you know, at the end, chess is now not happening on your higher level, on your, you know, there is chess development taking place, schools are playing, you know, your normal tournaments run, but anything on national level and international level is not happening at the moment, and which is sad, because that is what the children work for all their lives, is to participate, represent their country, get their colours, and that, yeah, that is what they work for, and that's a problem.
Anything that you would like to add, Hendrik?
Maybe just, you know, in addition to what Judy said, is at a very low level, the players play because they enjoy it, and also all the other benefits that chess brings. However, in the end, Chess South Africa is there to take the sport internationally, and currently we cannot do that. The International Federation, with the suspension from SASCOC, inevitably had to take certain steps because we are now not recognized by the international body, by the national overarching body. So the International Federation had to take certain steps, which makes it very difficult for us. And I think most of all, I know, or I can feel personally, the uncertainty that this brings. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I'm sort of like part of the decision making. How bad must that not be on ground level for players who or individuals, kids, and our adult players they just want to play. And you have this chaos which is actually created. It's a created chaos. And they look at that, and I really feel for the players, and that the uncertainty that it brings for them, the kids, that they want to represent their country. They are patriots. They want to go out there and say, here I am. I'm from South Africa. I'm representing South Africa. We are now sending a couple of kids to Batumi, and they don't know if they are representing South Africa or not. It's just devastating. It's not fair. And up to today, we have done everything according to the Chess South Africa Constitution to try and make sure that this doesn't happen. The irony of it all is that if you go and look at the transcript of the meeting that happened on the 22nd of April at SASCOC, Chess South Africa were actually suspended because we were following the Constitution.
Hendrik and Judy, thank you. I think we've pictured the background that we needed to picture. I think for our listeners today, the reason for the interview today was to provide the necessary whole picture of what's truly going on in chess in South Africa at this stage, and what the implications of these decisions by the governing body, which is SASCOC in this case, has on ground level. It is important for us at AfriForum to intervene in any unjust action, and we are therefore working with the current board of Chess South Africa to see how we can solve this issue, to be able to get the individuals in our communities to participate in the sport once again. Thank you for tuning in, and we are looking forward to your questions and your remarks on this interview.